What's up everyone, Thralls Metal here once again. I'm Necrotic Nick and I have an album review for you. So I'm going to go over one that you guys have really been asking us to go over, and I can totally see why after listening to it. So I am going to go over the newest album from Wilderun, Epigone. This comes out on the 7th of January on Century Media Records. This band formed in 2008 in Boston, Massachusetts. This is their fourth full-length album, and their frontman slash guitarist slash multi-instrumentalist Evan Barry is also an ex-member of Replicare and Mortal Bird, and These Are They. So he comes from kind of an interesting background in terms of different styles of metal. Now admittedly, this is the first time I've ever sat down and listened to an album by Wilderun, and I've been hearing their name tossed around a lot. I know they put out one, I believe, early last year too. So this is a definitely hard-working band, and this is a very impressive band. Musically, this whole thing reminds me of a combination of earlier Opeth, those, golden years where they were still growling, but also delivering the most unbelievable catchy melodies and musical composition out there. And one of my favorite artists in terms of prog metal, Devin Townsend. This is something somewhere in between that, and it's a colliding of two really cool styles, and actually colliding doesn't seem right because these mesh really well. Now the opener, Exhaler, I guess you could say it's an intro, but it's a musical intro. It's actually a song, but it's more or less a build-up into the much bigger songs to come. In fact, the first 4 tracks of this album are over 40 minutes worth of music, and it's really impressive. Now, Exhaler has 2 versions. They actually tacked on a different version of it. They have one that is predominantly acoustic guitars, and then it sort of builds up into a big crescendo with, drums and the electric guitars and loads of symphonic elements. The other version is predominantly synths, and I can't decide which one I like more because they both kind of capture a very different feel. I love the lush synths, but I love the bare acoustic sounds, and with the vocals standing out more in the bare acoustic intro, I don't know, I kind of like that one maybe a little bit more. But that goes into the longest song on the album, Wool Gatherer, and this is where you hear pretty much the entire gamut of everything they do. This band is in love with layered soundscapes, and again, blend of Opeth and Devin Townsend, but also symphonic arrangements. There's a lot of strings on here, lots of different stringed instruments. I believe there's mandolins on here as well, but it comes together in this very lush, majestic, epic sound, and kind of uses the sort of emotional roller coaster of the song to really kind of just dive into different moods. It can go from predominantly acoustic work with lush synths behind it, and then into much more heavy riff-driven sections with blast beats. This opening song is over 14 minutes long, and it takes you on quite the adventure. You just kind of don't know where it's going to go next, but my God, the music is absolutely beautiful. Vocally, I really dig this. The cleans are really good. The backup vocals that come in and give it sort of a giant choir effect, absolutely amazing. It pretty much just takes whatever moment they come in and just makes it that much more epic, but they also bring in some harsh vocals, and there are some really nasty death growls on here. And this is one of those bands where I think if you're just a fan of really good music, just really inventive music, someone could get past the growls on this one. This is kind of like that, Opeth effect, where it's wow, they sing really well. I don't know about the growling sections, but I think over time, you kind of get used to it and you just appreciate the music for how great it is. But the way the death metal-ish sections come in, it really reminded me a lot of Opeth, especially on Identifier and Passenger. Passenger especially. There is a death metal breakdown in there that, God, I mean, honestly, it reminds me a lot of the heavier verses on the Lotus Eater off of Watershed. Just deep, gnarly vocals, giant chunky riffs, and then into these giant sweeping melodies that would not sound out of place on a Devin Townsend project album. The production on here is absolutely amazing. In terms of all the stuff that is going on here, the fact that you're able to hear every single bit on here really matters, and they chose Jens Bogren to mix this. And I mean, his resume sort of speaks for itself. He did a marvelous job on here. There's a lot on here where they are incorporating, again, lots of layers of melodies. You have string sections, synths, acoustic guitars, and electric guitars doing sort of an interplay thing with heavier riffs and strumming. And then, you know, like an acoustic melody underneath, plus vocals on top of that. And you can pick out all that individually, and I think that really matters in here. And the dynamic shifts in these songs, going from sort of quiet, soft, very bare bones, like acoustic and vocal, to building up tension and then ramping full on into flat out death metal again. Like, this gets surprisingly heavy for what the bulk of it is, because the bulk of it is fiercely melodic and carried by just gorgeous, catchy riffs, melodies. The singing on here, again, is unbelievable. But the fact that it can switch gears and just kind of catch you off guard where you're being kind of, you know, lulled into the clouds and rainbows and all that horse shit, because this is honestly a very positive sounding listen. Like, it doesn't sound depressive. That's kind of where it doesn't sound like Opeth. It's more akin to Devin Townsend style, where everything is more emotional and sort of uplifting. Identifier is probably one of my favorites on here for a number of different reasons. I love how kind of light and airy it is. It's very melodic. There's a lot of playful grooves that sort of dance along in there. But it has these weird kind of sci-fi soundscapes that kind of come up every now and then. They kind of feel, I don't know, like a dark, twisted version of the movie Tron that just kind of pops in there for a second. And it's a real interesting little shift. Like, it's, again, light and airy. It's really nice. It's pleasant. And then it starts getting kind of creepy. And then all of a sudden, oh no, we're fine. And I don't know, I kind of like that. I felt like there was a weird tension and release thing. Like, you felt like the really heavy section was coming, and then it kind of just teases that for a while. But when it came down to pretty much throwing every little bit of the prog wheelhouse into, I guess, essentially one song, Distraction, which is broken up into 4 movements. So they are separate tracks in here, but it kind of works as one song. But it's interesting because they're actually separated to where they could stand alone as their own song. So I kind of like that. It doesn't just run one track and the other. There are cool segues in between, but they work independently. The first one is actually kind of a more straightforward rocker. It is more riff driven. I think the atmosphere in it is really cool. It has this really steady build to it. And then the second part gets decidedly more technical, and honestly, it's probably the heaviest track on here throughout. It doesn't really do a lot of mood dancing. Of course, there are shifts because this band has so much to throw in, but it stays kind of heavy and chunky almost throughout the entire song, and I really like that one. That one kind of just showed off their heavier side, and well, they excel at that too. But I have to say my favorite one was the third, Distraction. This one, I swear the feeling is like you're attending someone's outdoor summer wedding. There's lush synths. It has this very peaceful, at, you know, peace with nature sort of feel. And then Dream Theater crashes the party and John Petrucci starts shredding his fucking balls off. And the bride and the groom both look at each other and say, wait, did you invite them? It's like, no, I thought you did. But I think overall they're pretty much glad they're there, right? Because it's Dream Theater. You want them at your wedding. Why not? I love how it builds up to this moment. It gets progressively more epic, but it kind of keeps this real just subdued feel. It's, again, very peaceful and serene. And then it just gets flat out fucking epic. And the leads across the board here are absolutely amazing. But I like this lead because it really kind of just ramps up that giant majestic feel, and it might scare all the birds away, but it's still kind of communing with nature a little bit. Now, there are a few negatives on here, and they're not super big ones. The track Ambition is kind of just a long interlude of just, I don't know, like looped sci-fi noises and synths and ambience, and I don't know. It feels like they were just kind of fucking around, and that was like sort of like a chapter break between the two halves of the album, because the Distraction half kind of takes up one half of the album. And then the last Distraction track, which is called Distraction Nulla, is very odd. It also could be argued it's the heaviest track, but it's a very like noisy track. Like the drums sound way more muffled. There's more like static in there. And honestly, it gets a little like avant-garde, maybe black metal a bit in there. It's a strange track, and it honestly feels like a different band is in the studio just recording under Jens settings for Wilderun. but I don't know, it didn't really grab me, and I was kind of looking for an even bigger ending to the whole Distraction saga, because every other part was fucking amazing. This part was just, well, I mean, okay, but a little bit of a head scratcher. But I really did appreciate what I guess would be considered bonus tracks in here. The extra version of Exhaler I think is really good, but the cover of Radiohead's Everything in Its Right Place is absolutely amazing. It's a total reimagining of the song too. I love Kid A. That is one of my favorite Radiohead albums, and that opening track made me a fan instantly. It's just pulsating synths, and Tom York is just sort of breathy, and I don't know, it's a great song. It's kind of hard to describe, but I mean, it's synth driven, it's dark and depressing, which dark and depressing is kind of a good chunk of Radiohead's material, but this turns it into a heavy stomper of a song, but it kind of keeps the same feel, but again, with those lush symphonic elements, which honestly on this album, symphony stuff generally can kind of put me off, but the way it's mixed, it doesn't make the songs overbearing. They're not like so out front that they're driving you nuts. They actually complement the songs really well, and it shows off a lot of the composition. Like, they really knew how to write these parts in to really just accentuate these songs. But back to this cover, it just changes the mood overall. And I think it's just a really cool reimagining of a really cool song. I really dug this. I was kind of surprised because I looked at the track list and saw that. I was like, as I'm listening to this, how are they going to approach this? And they kind of approached it the way I thought they would, but I don't know, like it really just works with me. It still kind of captures the same vibe, except without the whole minimalist sort of, approach that was on Kid A. This was pretty much like, yeah, fuck minimalist stuff. We're just gonna throw everything in there. And how they ended it, especially, like those closing melodies on the original song, they kind of turned it into, I don't know, like jazzy rhythms and such. I just loved it, but that's kind of the feel in this entire album. I just loved it. I can totally see why you guys recommended this. This is really, really fucking good, and I ordered it about halfway through listening to it. That's how good it was. There's something about the first week of January here lately, because last year, the first week of January, we got Frozen Soul, and that fucking blew me away. And this is kind of the same effect, albeit a very different style of metal. I'm gonna go ahead and give this 4.5 stars. This is absolutely remarkable. They blended two of my favorite bands, essentially, and didn't necessarily come off as a tribute to either. They really have their own sound. The fact that it's fiercely progressive, it can get downright fucking heavier than hell, but with all these symphonic elements and atmosphere, and there's so much to really latch onto here. The songwriting is exemplary. The vocals are absolutely just majestic as hell. This feels like a progressive metal band's attempt to score a movie, and I kind of want to see this movie because I have a feeling it's fucking epic as hell. It'll probably be loaded with CGI, but that's most movies these days, as long as the soundtrack is cool in this one, because it's just absolutely marvelous. This is almost like the progressive metal version of ELO in some ways. Like, I kind of like the whole, let's, just dial in some solid hooks, but let's make these songs adventurous and fun as hell, and that is this entire album. There were a few spots in here that I wasn't the biggest fan of, but they were short, and they got to the next thing that I loved pretty quickly. I'm gonna have to check out more of their stuff. I don't even know if this is like as good as their last one or any of them, because I haven't listened to them yet, but I know I really like this. If you love progressive metal, if you love great songwriting, if you love Opeth and Devin Townsend kind of combined, like, because that is probably the most simple description I could give you here, definitely check this out. This is an amazing listen, and holy shit, what a start to 2022. Definitely check this one out. So, if you enjoyed this review, give it a thumbs up, and if you are new to the channel, subscribe, because we do stuff like this all the time. We also are on Patreon. If you'd like to help us out there will be a link down below. And we're gonna get cracking on getting these shirts made so we can make an announcement, so we can sell you shirts once again. Again, I'll put the Gmail address up there when we do the shirt announcement, because we want to do an announcement for that, and we want to do an announcement for a giveaway we want to do in the future, because holy shit, we are getting close to 10,000 subscribers, and oh my god, thank you guys. That is, again, another number that I thought we'd never hit. I didn't think we'd hit, name a number. that's the number I didn't think we'd hit. And here we are, the precipice of 10,000, and it's due to you guys. So thank you all so much from the bottom of our blackened hearts. And with that, we will catch you later.